How do you feel about correcting in public? I love it. I'll tell you why in a minute. Especially for things like aggression. My dog lunged at another dog, so I gave her a hard correction and commanded her to a heel position. A person on the street yelled asshole. My wife is worried about what others think. What are your thoughts? That's a great question, Eric. I don't care what anybody thinks. I could give a darn what anybody thinks. Because my dog is my responsibility. From the minute I get that dog until that dog takes its last breath, that dog is my responsibility. And if my dog lunges out and tries to attack another dog or bite another dog or act aggressive towards another dog, the dog will receive a severe correction, right? Because it's not acceptable. I can't lure it away with a treat or a clicker or anything like that. It requires the correction must match the action the dog did. That the dog is not permitted in any way to be aggressive to another dog. That's it. If your dog had broken off the leash, right, or you dropped the leash, and the dog would have went and mauled that other dog, then what would people think? Right? They'd be pissed at you because you didn't control your dog. But because you controlled your dog, they call you an asshole. The only person who's an asshole is the person who called you an asshole, right? The issue here is we live in this politically correct world, in this rosy, cheeky, pretty, sweet world that doesn't really exist, right? Where every dog is friendly and everybody is good and we should trust everybody. Well, you know what? I don't trust anybody. If I had a young daughter and she was going into a bathroom and somebody was going to the bathroom behind her, I would go in the bathroom too. You can't trust. So based on this, you did the absolute 100% correct thing. Your dog lunged, you corrected her, told her to get into heel position. You told her what you wanted her to do, get into heel position, and corrected her for not doing it or for leaving that position. Kudos to you for standing up for the rights of your dog and protecting the other dog, and God knows who else was involved, right? The other dog could have gotten bit, the other person could have gotten bit, and your dog can start to learn a bad behavior. But because you corrected your dog, because you had the balls to stand up against this politically correct, narcissistic society whose completely myopic view of dog training creates more monsters and fills more shelters and causes the death of more dogs because they won't correct them, and then they want to get the dogs out of the shelter that are that aggressive that they can't correct. This is the problem. But because of what you're doing, you're correcting the dog, you're giving the dog guidance and structure. You didn't hit your dog, kick your dog, spit on your dog like I got in trouble for telling somebody about that a couple months ago. You didn't do anything abusive. You yanked your dog. You gave her a pop while you said, hey, knock it off. And that's exactly what you need to do. Do that, because the more you do it, it's not going to take many times, but the more often you do it, if the dog does it again, do it again. Tell your wife that you're right. I said you're right. You're doing the right thing. You're giving your dog the guidance, the structure, and the boundaries. I should do it this way. Boundaries. To know what's permitted and what's not permitted, what's safe and what's not safe, what will keep this dog alive and what might get that dog killed. You're giving the dog the information and the tools to stay alive. Corrections are one of the most important things in dog training. Without a correction, the dog will falter and fail constantly and will continue to fail and fail and fail until its life is over. Giving the dog the correction gives it the ability to know, hey, I got in trouble last time, I'm not going to do that again. And if it requires a second or third correction, make sure the correction is firm enough and fair enough and timed well enough that the dog understands what they're getting in trouble for, because you're helping your dog to learn structure. You must do that or you won't be able to keep the dog. And all these people who are naysayers and go against you on this and who criticize me for it, they're not training dogs. They're just not. They're criticizers. They're armchair quarterbacks. They're this is mean. Oh, this is that. And it's all bullshit, right? Because they're not training the dogs. So kudos to you for training your dog. You did the right thing. Keep it up and give your dog a big hug and a big kiss and tell her you love her, because you do. You wouldn't have given her the correction if you didn't love her. It says, hi Robert, I love all your helpful videos. We adopted a German Shepherd Husky mix 6 months ago from a shelter. She's 2 years old, has had a litter of pups before we adopted her, seemed like she was totally untrained and had never been in a house. She was paper trained. My question, she is afraid of my husband if he's standing or walking. She will come to him if he's lying on the bed and will play with him if he's lying down or sometimes sitting. If he stands, she will not come to him for a treat. Will leave the room. Sometimes tucks her tail between her legs. He has taken her for long walks, and even though she is reluctant to leave, and he is always kind to her. Reluctant. Okay. She is very attached to me right from the start. So is this very smart and playful? She is very smart and playful. We both love her. Any advice? Well, you're doing the right thing, right? You need to kind of back away from the dog. So when we first got the Duenameter, he was so attached to Janet for the right reason. Janet's very kind and loving and beautiful, but she was, everything to him. So we had to change it, and I had to kind of be a little bit more abrupt. I'm the dad, right? The dad is going to be tougher. He's going to give her more tough love. And that's what your husband needs to do. He needs to just get in there and make it positive. Right? In other words, even if you're taking it, you need to be less involved in the dog here, because it's never going to get better if you don't fix this. She has to go through the fire to get out of the fire. And in this sense, the fire is her having to tolerate your husband, who I'm sure is a very nice man because you married him. That's why it's your husband. And you need to be a part of that. So in other words, if she turns back to you, you just cross your arms and look away. Don't say, go with daddy, go with daddy, go with daddy. Don't do that. She goes with dad. Dad feeds her. Dad should be hand feeding her. Maybe don't feed her. I hate to say this, people are going to say I'm cruel, but maybe don't feed her for a day and then let your husband come over and hand feed her a little bit. If she doesn't take the food, give her something more yummy. Maybe rub some hot dogs onto your husband's hands and make sure he washes them before he goes to bed. And he gets some hot dogs in the treats. Make the experience with your husband a huge experience. Make the experience with your husband be something so overly positive that she almost can't help herself but liking him, right? I mean, I'm sure he had to do some really nice things to get you to marry him, maybe flowers. Dogs don't like flowers, but they love hot dogs. They love string cheese. Find things your dog loves and have your husband present them, and you don't. You're not going to be that involved with the dog for the next couple of weeks or maybe a month or two. You're going to let him take the role of being the hero, the good guy, and all that stuff. And I think you're going to have a lot better relationship with your dog and your husband too. So do that. Go slow. Work at it, and just be patient. Sometimes rescue dogs have behavioral issues. Go slow. It's going to work out for sure. You've had her for 6 months. You're on your home stretch. You're committed to the dog, and I applaud you for rescuing a dog and for emailing me and asking me for this advice, because I think it's that important. There is no way I can put collar over my dog's head. Did I just say that with a Russian accent? There is no way I can put collar over my dog's head. I don't know how to calm her down and stop trying to bite me. Now I'm talking totally in a Russian accent. And the collar. Same with leash. Okay, so Slavko. First of all, what you need to do is you need to get the collar in the presence of the dog, get it in front of the dog, lay it on the floor, pick it up, walk it around, get it to be not so interesting. Because usually what's going to happen with a dog, more than likely, is you're going to try to get the collar on the dog and try to rustle the dog outside and do this and do that. And it's this level of excitement that makes her bite. Is it a female? Yeah, makes her bite the collar, bite the leash, bite your hands in excitement, right? Later, the more frustrated the dog becomes with this, the more aggressive that will turn. And then you're going to have a problem, right? Then you're going to have a huge, huge, huge problem. And you don't want that problem. You don't want that problem whatsoever. So what I would suggest to do is hold the leash in your hand, the collar in your hand, give the dog some treats. Let the dog sniff the collar, give the dog some treats. And then stop. Then come back 10 minutes later and do the same thing. Make the object very neutral or positive to the dog. Don't just try to slap it around the dog's neck, because you're going to have a problem with this. And this is not going to fix itself later on. The more aversive it becomes for the dog to see that object, the more the dog triggers, oh my God, this is coming, I'm going to get excited, I'm going to get wound up, the more issue the dog will have with it long term. And you won't be able to get that past the dog's mind. So use treats, lay the collar next to the dog when the dog is eating. Let all these things be positive associations for the dog. And then you're going to ask me, Robert, how do I then walk my dog if I can't put a collar on the dog and a leash on the dog for the next couple of weeks, right? Because it's going to take a couple of weeks to do this. And I will give you the answer now. Order yourself a slip lead. A slip lead, like sometimes called a British slip lead or a shepherd's lead, is just a long piece of rope with a noose on one side. and you just put it over your dog's head and you take off and walk. In other words, it's super easy to just take it, open it, put it on the dog's head, put the stopper down, and you're off walking. Super, super simple. That's going to be the easiest way until you can get the dog. Don't go back to a leash and collar until you fix this. A shepherd's noose is the easiest, a shepherd's lead or whatever you want to call it, slip lead, is the easiest way to introduce your dog to having a walk and not having to have that collar, because you don't have to fussle around the dog's neck. And that's where I don't even know if fussle is a word. You have to get it around the dog's neck, and that's when you're grabbing the dog's neck. Those are issues with the dog. That's the last piece of advice I give you in this piece also, is teach your dog that you can run your hand along the dog's neck over and over again while you're hand feeding the dog, so that the dog sees the presence of your hand is not a negative thing. The more you can get the dog to see that these outside things are not negative, then you put all the pieces together and you'll be able to put the collar on the dog's neck and the leash around, onto the collar, and take your dog for a walk again. Take your time. Please, please, please. Should take you at least 2 to 3 weeks to get this kind of wired down so that it's completely gone. I don't know how long it's been going on with your dog there, Slavko, but it's probably been going on for a while, because I don't get to these questions that fast. So you'll need to do that. Make sure the dog understands it's all a good association, and get yourself a slip lead, and it'll help you a lot. Can you retrain a dog even at 2 years? We use consistent commands with our 2-year-old and 18-month-old, and they work for the most part. However, we now have a 12-week-old. I like the simplicity of your command and want to retrain with the way you train. Is it possible? Okay, so I see what you're saying. So the problem here is that you like the way my techniques work on your 12-week-old because you just started doing it. Can you retrain the old dog? And the answer is yes. I've retrained Maya, because Maya I got when she was about 3 or 4 years old. I retrained her to my methodology. It was not a big deal. You must be consistent. The secret to dog training is consistency and patience. You must be consistent and you must be patient, because it's a new language for the dog. It's a new way of understanding. It's a new communication for the dog. And if the dog is going to understand that, they're going to require that to be the new norm. So you can't go back and forth and back and forth. It's just like a new sheriff in town. We're starting today. We're starting a new program. We're going to start, marking, luring, shaping, and marking the behaviors. We're going to start rewarding this way, correcting in this way. And if you're going to follow the system, look, there's nothing wrong with doing it 2 different ways for 2 different dogs. Nothing wrong at all if that works for you. In other words, if the dog is already trained and you're fine with the dog, not a big deal. I wouldn't worry that much about it. But if you want to retrain the dog and you want to use my system, yes, you can do it. Not a big deal. Be consistent, go slow, and be patient. Got a question? Ask me anything.